Hi, everybody. My name is Chris Pugh. I'm the editor of Mahoning Matters. We do Mahoning Matters interviews, just a good way of catching up with people in the Valley. A lot of news happen in the Valley, and this gives us a chance to give an unfiltered kind of conversation with people who have been in the news and just kind of get a little peek behind what's happening. Today, we have Jamie Sell with us. Jamie's a Mahoning Valley resident. You might recognize the name of her son, Austin Burke. Austin has been convicted of a couple crimes in the Mahoning Valley area. There was a case of a robbery at Pizza Joe's. There was also a murder. The murder was of Brandon Sample in 2017. The robbery of a Pizza Joe's in Cortland was in 2017. He got sentenced to 30 years to life in prison. Austin's been also back in the news recently. We've had an article. There was a death inside the prison he was at, and he was accused of being responsible for the death. So he's currently going before a judge to consider that too. Jamie is Austin's mom, and Jamie has taken an active role on defending Austin and looking at the court system. And Jamie, I'm so glad you've been able to join us. How are you today?
I'm good.
Thank you, Jamie. Talk a little bit about. I know a lot of times when we read these stories in court matters, we say, "Wow, they're convicted, they're going to prison. That's it." But you've raised some questions about the details of the incidents in 2017. There were incidents that happened on two different dates. The court decided to try them together. What's your questions about what happened? Like, what's the evidence that you found that makes you think that these convictions shouldn't have been leveled against Austin?
So some of the very early things that made me realize there were that's something. Well, I mean, from the very beginning, there were things that I already knew personally just because of what I had experienced. Um, First of all, that evening that Brandon Sample came up missing, my boyfriend and I came home from a night out. We had gone to the Melody Inn that night. The Melody Inn, I believe, closes at 2 o'clock. We got home around 2:30, 3 o'clock, and Austin was standing in the kitchen. So, I mean, so there's things that I know just because I was there. And so I know he was standing there, so I know where I can place him. I know from the evidence and from some of the alibis that Austin was at a friend's house in the same town, which was a few streets over, and it was a house that he had been frequenting all the time, and it was the home of Cody and Connor Snyder, and their father Charles Snyder was also there, and so the detective knew this. The detective had interviewed Connor Snyder, and in the detective's report, it said that they had spoke to Charles Snyder, and so anyhow. One of the things that really let me know that there was like fraud or foul circumstances was when I originally asked the detective why my son was even being suspected in this. He literally told me to my face that my son's fingerprints were on Brandon Sample's steering wheel. And so I mean, immediately I was like, whoa, and I had, and every single person that goes through this says the same thing that I'm about to say right now. We all believed that the justice system was fair. We all believed that police don't lie. We all believed that prosecutors absolutely, do the best thing, search for justice. And so that was my belief at the time. And, so that I went to my son when I was visiting him, and I'm like, Austin, they said this, and I said, how can that be? And Austin said, Mom, I'm telling you, I don't know why they're saying this, but there's no possible way that my fingerprints were on the steering wheel. And as a parent, you can look in your kids' eyes and you can see that they're telling you the truth. And so I had all this inner turmoil. I mean, I couldn't sleep at night. I was like, what is going on here? Because it was like really messing me up, because I was like, who's lying? Because I can see the sincerity in Austin's eyes, but I couldn't believe that an officer lied to me. And this was like a problem for me. Like I just had like these like conflicting realities. You see what I'm saying? And so I didn't know much about what was going on in the case, and neither did Austin. Neither one of us knew what was really going on in the case, because we weren't actually involved in this murder, you know. So whatever running interference was happening or whatever was going on out there was outside of our knowledge. And the only thing that we knew was what the attorney would share with us. And he wasn't sharing much with me because he didn't want me interfering in his ability to help Austin. And Austin couldn't talk to me over the jail phone, because if he did, then the attorney said that we were going to be messing up the case. And so I couldn't communicate with my son to help him. I couldn't investigate this case from the outside while the trial, before the trial could happen, because I was prevented from being able to do that due to him, being in the jail. And so my hands were tied. It was awful. It was an awful circumstance. And so when the trial actually happened, and I heard that detective testify, and he said that he never fingerprinted the car, I was so angry. I was like, you lied straight to my face, and almost made me doubt my son for a moment there. And I knew in my gut that my son was telling the truth. So my son, he committed crimes as a juvenile, but he admitted to any crime that he did. If he admitted to a crime, he told me exactly why he did it, or how he did it, or what his part in it was, or if maybe he didn't do it, or he partially did it, or whatever. I mean, he has no problem telling anybody and taking responsibility for that. So I absolutely did not believe. I mean, because if he killed Brandon Sample, he'd be like, "Mom, I did it, and this is why." That wasn't the case. Brandon was somebody he liked. He was somebody he had a camaraderie with. They only knew each other for a few months while he was locked up in the juvenile detention center, because Brandon was a young correction officer there, and they were close in age. And Brandon didn't work there very long, but because of the fact that they were from the same area, they kind of were able to like share like stories of people maybe they knew, or areas that they knew. It kind of gave them a camaraderie. And Austin never had any problems when he was in that detention center. He was very trusted. Like, he mowed the lawns on the outside of the premises. He earned his high school diploma while he was in there. And I never really had to spend any money on him, because they were always like giving him free food, free phone calls, because he was just well liked. And also because of the fact that he's very good with martial arts. He taught anti-bully classes, to younger kids and stuff. He was able to help the correction officers like control some of the youth in the facility that were violent, or had mental health problems, or what have you. And so anyhow, that's just, a little bit of the background of why, after he was convicted and I saw what happened in the trial, and all of us that were there to witness this trial were in complete disbelief. Like, our jaws dropped when they said he was guilty, because if anybody had actually witnessed that trial, there was just no reason. It was not beyond a reasonable doubt, and he shouldn't have been convicted. The attorneys themselves told me the reason that they did not have anybody testify for the defense was because there was no case. There was no case. I mean, BCI said that Austin was never located near the body or the car that was dumped. the two girls that were robbed at the Pizza Joe's described the mixed race male. They didn't even have those two girls testify, but the one girl that did testify said, I never saw tattoos on the robber's hands. My son had tattoos. And the robber wasn't wearing any gloves. Like, a lot of the witnesses that they had up there, and I was talking to somebody about this earlier, didn't even implicate Austin in anything. It's just they wanted to parade a number of people to say, oh, look, we had 30 witnesses. Most of these witnesses testified and didn't say a single thing that implicated Austin in anything. So why were they even there to testify? I mean, so it was it was a joke. It was a real joke.
How difficult is it? I mean, he's your son. You're passionate about protecting him. I know if my kids, you love your kids. You love your kids unconditionally and everything. How hard is it? Because I know it can be hard if you're out there, making your case and everything. And I know sometimes the general public is like, what's she doing there? He got convicted. How do you go about that? Because obviously you feel convinced that the right is on his side. That's where you make that push. But also, you're a mom too. I mean, it's hard to say, okay, I'm not going to support you, son or daughter, or anything like that. How difficult has it been for you throughout this whole process?
First, I just want to give a slight disclaimer, because if I had even slightly believed that my son was responsible for killing another person, I have to say that, number one, I would not want somebody like that in my home. Number
Okay.
two, I would not have given up my entire life, my graduate school education, my home, my retirement, and everything. I mean, my personal life, to fight this battle. And number three, if I could just say to my son, settle in, you kind of made your bed. Now it's time to lie in it. Maybe we could get a sentence reduction. Maybe we can do this. Maybe we can do that. But I'm not going to take away from my life and your other two brothers' lives, when you kind of did something that was this egregious. Do you see what I'm saying? And
Yeah.
it would
Yeah.
be easier for me to say, my son did wrong. I love him. I'm going to do what I can, to be there for him while he's in prison. But
Yeah.
I certainly would not, condone it, and I would not make excuses for him, because of the fact that I am completely convinced that he's absolutely innocent of both of these. That kind of puts me in the uncomfortable position of giving up my entire life, because I cannot let this happen to somebody. And then when you see that he's not the only one that this has happened to, and that this is a bigger fight, and then there's not just this injustice, but you've got these issues with these prisoners in the jail that are dying, and then you've got the cruel abuses in the prisons. And it's like it woke me up to just a whole nother world of people who needed advocacy. And as a nurse, that's what I do. I advocate for people. I advocate for their health, or whatever it is that's going to make their quality of life better, when they're experiencing sickness or tragedy. And that isn't just something that I do when I clock in and I clock out. Like, that is just who I am. Like, that's just what I do. That would be like, anybody else who has a calling. Like, it kind of pervasives over everything in your life, not just, in your work,
Yeah. Yeah. No, yeah, I understand that definitely. I think there's a lot of ways that you can help support a family member that's in prison. Even if you feel they're guilty,
Oh,
you can
yeah.
just say, "Hey, I'm going to support you as you serve your time." And if you don't feel your son was guilty, as a mom, why wouldn't you support? You know what I mean? It
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it was,
and so then there's like a whole nother like aspect. So I mean, there are parents that, I'm sorry, let me close that out. So there are parents that have to help support, their, their, I don't know, kids or whatever in the prison in the way to help them do their time. But then there's like a whole nother aspect or a whole nother culture of people out here who have to, help help prisoners not only be okay with the injustice trauma that's happened to them, help them investigate their case, help them, get attorneys or private investigators or whatever means necessary, to help overturn, these injustices, but then also, support them with their everyday needs, because the food in there obviously is not desirable. And so then there's the added expense of, the commissary items and these food boxes, and then the phone calls, which, can be costly. And then now they've got video visits that are even more costly than the phone calls. And, and a lot of times the prisoners are sent so far from your home that creates like barriers for families to see their loved ones, especially if they have transportation issues or health issues, trying to get to them. So as a mother that is like realizing that an injustice was done to their son, I had to teach myself to do things that I never in my life thought I was going to have to do. I didn't know what a public records request was. I didn't know what sunshine laws were. I didn't know, how to go seek out, the prosecutor's file, and how I didn't know the processes for appeals, and there were time frames that apply to appeals, and then there's a lot that goes along with that. You're only guaranteed an attorney for a direct appeal, but not for a post-conviction appeal or for habeases that go to the federal courts. So you almost have to get a crash course in law in order to be able to effectively advocate for somebody. And then it was, so I had people that just kind of started helping me along the way. And so when this first started, and it was all over Facebook, because, the news would be posting things on Facebook, and then there would be comments, and you're talking hundreds and hundreds of comments. And so what happened is I started meeting people on Facebook, and everybody's like, stay off Facebook, don't look at it, it's just going to upset you. And that's easier said than done, because there were times that I found hints and clues watching those comments. And then I met people. And so I met this lady named Lori. She was also a traveling nurse. She had been married to a prosecutor. And so she started the process of reading the trial transcripts and teaching me how to do public records requests, how to get a copy of the autopsy, how to read the autopsy, how to understand it. And so she started mentoring me. Well, then I started attending wrongful conviction rallies in different states, and I started meeting people. Then I started listening to podcasts about wrongful convictions. Jason Flom does the wrongful conviction podcast, and he goes through every exoneree in like pretty much in the United States. Like he questions one by one, like how their case went, what went wrong, and he interviews the attorneys, and they talk about how the cases got overturned and how they were able to investigate these things. And so when you start investigating or you start listening to these other cases and you see similarities, and you're like, holy crap, like this isn't here. I'm thinking that this just happened to us. And early on, I'm like, oh, this just happened to us. And then I find out it's a systemic issue that doesn't just happen in Trumbull County. It doesn't happen in Ohio. It happens all over the United States. And they all kind of have like their MOs of how they do it. Like there's and so I had to teach myself how to make a website, and I had to, because all of this stuff costs money. And if you can save money by teaching yourself how to do certain things, then you can kind of work within a budget. I mean, I'm fortunate that I have a job that earns a good income, but a lot of what I had to do was from the help of others,
Right.
that stepped in to help, and mostly it was strangers. Now, of course, we have our base core friends that have been here like for Austin's whole life and our whole life, that believe in him and believe in me. But it helped that strangers came in and helped too. You know.
Yeah, definitely. And I wanted to make a just a general viewpoint to our audience here. Why we have people like Jamie on is we cover the news. So we've done stories about Austin, and we're going to continue to cover this case and share what happens in the courtroom. We're going to talk in a second about Austin's facing another charge, and but at the same time, what we want to do with Mahoning Matters is we want to tell everyone stories. This isn't just saying, hey, here's what happened in the court, here's what's happening in jail. It's more of what happens to families during this time. So that's why
Mhm.
we definitely feel it's important to have Jamie on that share her story too, because she has a story. Austin has a story. The courts have a story. Um, Brandon Sample has a story too, and we're not justifying or showcasing one over the other. Jamie's willing to tell her story, and we definitely want to share what she has to say. What's made this case a little bit more complex is, as Jamie, you know, and from other reporting, I know this too. The jail is a tough spot, and sometimes things do happen. Um, Austin did get in a fight with an inmate. The inmate passed, and they're accusing Austin of being responsible for the death. Now, in a pre-interview, you were telling me about you were saying he got in the fight. I think you had some questions on was Austin responsible for this man's death, and I think that's something
Mhm.
you're continuing to do. I know you have
Mhm.
some questions about that you're fighting about. How does that make this case a little bit different? I mean, I know this is
Mhm.
a different charge, a totally different situation. Does that make your fight tough for what happened back in 1718?
Well, I can just tell you, when I thought that we had been through the biggest nightmare of our whole lives, and that somehow we were navigating it and kind of getting to like a place where I could almost take a break and start to become like a normal person, and maybe start to, have like a regular social life and not be fighting all the time, then this comes up in August of last year. And so Austin was just getting ready to be leveled down to a level 3, which meant that he was going to be leaving Lucasville and going to a lower level prison where he would enjoy, more freedom while he's fighting his case. And so he was looking forward to training dogs. He was looking forward to finishing his undergraduate education because he had already started his first semester in undergraduate college while he was in Lucasville. But he put it on hold because he wanted to get to a more comfortable living situation to continue that, because it's hard to do that from solitary confinement. He did earn his paralegal from Blackstone University, and was on the dean's list while he was at Lucasville. That was, something that he had done at his family's cost. I paid for that. And he hadn't had a ticket for 2.5 years, and so we kind of thought we were in the clear. And he's having conversations with his family and friends and his girlfriend, and he's talking about how he can't wait to train dogs and this, that, and the other. And the next thing this man Melendez, starts threatening to kill my son from his cell, down below on the lower tier. And nobody saw this coming. It was reported in the newspaper that they checked Austin's phone calls. They checked both of their cells, because normally if the people know they're going to fight, they start packing their stuff up, and because they know they're going to go to the hole. So there's always signs that there's going to be a fight before they check their cells. There was no signs that anybody had planned anything. And so, and this was reported in the newspaper. It was also reported in the State Highway Patrol report. Um, from what I understand, the correction officers heard Melendez threatening to kill my son, lock themselves in the bubble, and then let the two of them out on the yard together. And this is in like a maximum security prison. That is ridiculous. If the man's threatening to kill my son, administratively or procedurally, he should have been put in the hole, because that's like a major infraction. And instead, they pop his door first, and he starts walking over towards the stairs, where Austin would be descending, and then they pop Austin's door. So Melendez was obviously not only threatening my son, but he was heading in the direction, to go greet my son, as if he knew that my son was going to be coming out of that cell. And so, I know this was self-defense. There's many more things that I know that I can't speak on right now, but this story is evolving. There are people that are working in Lucasville right now that were friends with the original victim's dad that worked at OSP, and so it has been a struggle. My son has been being retaliated on for the last several years. It is my position that it has something to do with the original victim's father's friends. And now our nightmare just, did get bigger, but I know how to cope. I know safe ways to cope. I've got great friends. We've got a great support system. We have people that don't even know us that are stepping in to help us, because they know how ridiculous this is, because this isn't isolated. This happens all over the United States. And so you've got, advocates that are national that know that this is not like a unique circumstance. And so we do have a good support system in the wrongful conviction community. The Innocence Projects, the wrongful conviction conferences, the rallies, Jason Flom and Muhammad Ali's daughter, they are awesome. Like, there's a lot of people out here, and even our federal attorneys, paralegals, Arthur Bean, everybody who has stepped in. Like, our attorney, it took my son's case, and he's the only case in the state of Ohio that they have, and she's from Oklahoma. And the Innocence Project did sponsor her to get to represent Austin in the federal courts in Ohio. So it has been a long, hard fight, but I drove to Arizona to go to the wrongful conviction conference because my plane broke down. Like, I have done everything humanly possible that I could to try to get our story out there, to show the evidence that I have found, to find people that can help, bring some light and understanding into what it is that we're experiencing. And, to keep the hope for Austin, and to make sure that in the process we can stay grounded, and we can, continue to be able to get through our grief, our trauma, and I guess just continue to live in whatever reality we have to.
Well, thank you, Jamie. I appreciate that. We're going to continue to follow the story, and again, part of what we do, we obviously need to report on what happens at the trial, but we need to understand families and what happened, how this is affecting families, and if there's a fight for innocence. Look, America is about that. I mean, you're innocent until proven guilty. And Jamie, if you feel you have a case, you have the right to go after the case and try to help your son as best as possible. And I think that's the thing. If I can speak editorially for a second, I would hope for the people in the community as well. I'm sure there's the other side to the story where other people are making other arguments, and we respect that. And we would definitely welcome the other side to come on and share their side of the story. We're not favoring one or the other. But understand, there is sides of the story that need to be told, and there's, there's people out there that say, "Hey, if a conviction's wrong, we want to do our best to overturn it," and that's what we're focused on presenting here. Well, Jamie, hang on for a minute afterwards.
Can I say one thing? I forgot.
Yeah, definitely.
I forgot. We do have a book coming out The name of the book is Wrong Ride Home. Donna Waters co-authors the book with me. Well, she did like an investigative, like deep dive into this case. She also wrote the book for another exoneree named Christine Bunch. It's called, something about the fight for Miss America. But if you check out Donna Waters, you can see the list of all the books that she's written. I have a headache, and so I'm having a hard time recalling some things. But I just wanted to mention that we do have that book coming out. We expected it to be out this month, but Donna kind of had an injury, and then it's in editing, and anyway, it's getting put off again, and I'm sorry, but I'll be forthright with whenever that book will be coming out.
Yeah, send us a reminder, and we'll definitely share that. Well, Jamie, thanks so much for your time, and everyone, thanks for checking out Mahoning Matters interviews. Have a great day, everybody.
Mhm.